I was not able to return fire because I was shot in my trigger finger. My partner on
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Denisha Keating Show. I am super excited to have Elizabeth here with me. And we were just chatting before starting the show. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is going to be really hard. It's going to be a very hard topic. Now, remember, this is that kitchen table conversation where we're two friends coming together to understand the other person. So the two rules is that we can't yell at each other and we can't speak over each other. We are only going to be asking questions to understand where the other person's coming from and the why. So this is going to take a lot of listening and a lot of waiting, but this is that kitchen table conversation with two friends. And we're inviting you to be the fly on the wall, to be able to listen to how we would navigate a hard conversation like this. So Liz, I'm going to have you take it away. Is it okay to call you that, or is it Elizabeth? I want to make sure. Okay, Liz, take it away. Tell me a little bit about yourself for our audience to kind of get on board with what we are chatting about.
So my name is Elizabeth. I am 35 years old. I have recently retired from law enforcement January 1st of 2024. So about a year and 3 months now. I retired on a medical for PTSD. I was involved in an officer involved shooting back August 7th, 2018, where my partner and I were both ambushed. I was struck once in the trigger finger. He was struck 2 times in both of his arms. And I then returned back to work for an additional 5 more years. And my PTSD from the shooting just grew worse. So yes, I am a single mom to an 8-year-old. I have a daughter. Her name is Liliana. She has made a major impact in me in the most positive way possible. And so, yeah, I have recently got my master's degree back in May of 2024. I got my master's in public administration. When I was going for my master's, I was a little unsure as to where it was going to lead me. When I was initially doing it, I was like, okay, this is for promotional based purposes only. And then as I was like leaning towards the end of my career, considering possibly leaving, I was like, okay, maybe I can do like human resources or be a director in an organization. Now I'm gearing it more towards public speaking and advocating for mental health for first responders.
Was this one of the ones that with the ambush with your partner? Was this one of the ones that was all over the news for the ambush?
Yes, it was.
What year was it again?
2018.
I remember this one. Like, I remember, like, when you said it, I don't know why, but, like, I remember it being on the news, and I was like, oh, my gosh, what just happened?
Yes, it was, because there was three suspects involved. Yeah. Obviously, all 3 were on the run, and the investigation until they were all apprehended, I believe, took a total of 2.5 weeks.
Oh, God. Okay. I always try to make sure that we don't like say things that we don't want to say when it comes to our stories and like trauma dump, because it actually can make us spiral and make the PTSD come back. So it happened in 2018, and you just recently retired as of January 2025. What led to that? 2024. So last year. So it's been just over a year now, a year and 2 months. Mm-hmm. So from 2018 to 2024, what led to you being like, I just can't do this anymore?
So there is a multitude of reasons. The initial reason why I went back to work was because I can say now that I was very immature and young-minded and felt as though that I needed to prove something. When in all actuality, I had nothing to prove. Yeah. And like people always said, like, this is the golden ticket. Like, this is your opportunity to get out and get paid. And in my mindset, I was like, well, I don't even make enough money to sit and stay home as a single mom with my daughter. So like I was thinking financial reasons, and I had a kid. Now, if I didn't have a kid, that would be a different, like maybe I would have navigated different towards it. But primarily it was financial reasons, and I felt like I had something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
I say this because during my shooting, which I can go into detail, I have no problem doing
Yeah.
that. Um, I was not able to return fire because I was shot in my trigger finger. My partner, on the other hand, was able to return fire. So during the process of me being out of work, people were constantly asking him, like, oh, well, what did Ponte do? Why didn't Ponte return fire? What was she doing? Was she hiding under the dashboard? Now, just to give you a little information as far as the investigation, there was 25 rounds shot in 7 seconds. So in 7 seconds, there was a lot going on that it took me to realize, like, why isn't my gun firing, for me to go back under the dashboard and be like, oh my God, my
My
trigger finger
finger.
was hit.
Yeah.
That's why I can't pull the trigger. So when I went to transition to the opposite hand, at that point,
Yeah.
the windshield was all cracked. And I couldn't return fire because we were on a main highway in Camden City, I guess you could
Mm-hmm.
say. Not highway, but a busy road where it's known for high foot traffic. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to just aimlessly shoot my gun out and hit an innocent bystander, and
Yeah. Like
you know.
it it really gets me, and it's at first I laugh and then I get really angry when people are like, well, what did you do? Like, why didn't you just? And it's so my background is psychology, and I started learning really early on in my program, that when things happen, when real life situations happen, fight or flight takes place, but there is also freeze. Now you didn't freeze, you went down and were like, why, what is going on with my gun? And then you're like, oh, okay, I need my other hand here. And that wouldn't have processed unless you went down and was like, okay, let me look at the facts that are standing in front of me. But so many people will have an opinion on what you should do or could do, and then they're in that same situation and they do the exact same thing we would have done. And so it kind of like, first I'm like laughing, and then I'm like really just mad, because it's just like, just shush. Like, you haven't been in that
No, and
situation. Yeah, you don't know
right.
what that's like, but what does that do to you emotionally as a police officer? Like, you take your job super seriously, and then you're in this moment of what you did was right and all you could do, and then you leave and people are just bashing you. Like, what does that do to you?
So that caused a whole nother anxiety and like another
Mm-hmm.
part of PTSD amongst itself. However, when I first started hearing these comments being made, I was extremely angry.
Yeah.
I, and my partner was smart because he knew not to tell me. He knew not to
Yeah.
tell me all of it. He knew not to tell me names, so on and so forth, because he knew how I would get about it, because we
Yeah.
were in this situation together. Um, I was angry, and it took me a very, very, very long time. And I'm going to say, like, I calculated this almost 2 years to be able to accept the
Mm-hmm.
situation of me not being able to return fire. I think what made me overcome that situation was when I was in the process of returning back to work.
Yeah.
Um, I had a coworker who was helping me retrain because I didn't have strength in my right hand, my dominant hand that I was struck in, and I couldn't pull the trigger. I was having like a hard time. Like, it was
Yeah.
heavy. My hand was weak. My finger was weak. So he built me up, built the strength back up to the point that
Yeah.
I was actually like firing almost a hole. So my shots just got
We're a
better.
whole. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Instead
So
of,
that
was it like all over when you were shooting at the beginning, or
yeah.
was it like not really? What did that look like? Because I think some people won't understand that.
So I couldn't really hold a gun. So I
Yeah.
wasn't almost firing a gun. So we were, he and I were talking about me possibly transitioning to be a lefty shooter instead of a righty because I couldn't
Yeah.
pull the trigger. I was having the
Yeah.
trouble just letting it click or
Yeah.
whatever. So, um, we were finally, I remember he gave me this hand strengthening thing, and I would just sit in my living room and just like squeeze it all the time until I finally was able to gain the strength back, because I was like, no, I need to overcome this. I need to just get this
Yeah.
hand strengthened. Give me a tool that we could get through this. And we did. And um, initially, when I was a shooter, I wouldn't say that I was the best shooter, but I definitely
Mm.
didn't have to go through like
Yeah.
requalifications. Like I was always able to
Yeah.
qualify the first time. But when I say a hole, I say that all of my bullets I was able to group into a hole, making me a better
Yeah.
shooter.
Yeah.
I then was able to, um, I went to the firearms instructor's course. I went 2 different times. I didn't pass, but me being able and offered the opportunity to go
Yeah.
was amazing to me. So that was good within itself.
It's almost like emotional healing that takes place of like, I didn't fail. Like you said it, you were like, I didn't fail my partner. And that's what you had been feeling. And like, I'm like getting emotional for you because I'm just like, dang, like I have felt this in my own foster care journey where I've reported stuff or like I've tried to stand up for the person next to me and people are like, well, why didn't you? And it's like, you had no idea what I did and did not do in this moment. But
Right.
it's so hard. And then for your partner to be like, yeah, I'm not even gonna tell you, like, I know how you're gonna take this and this is not what happened. But I think
Right.
so many people would be like, well, why didn't he like call you out? And it's like literally when you look at your hand and you're like, oh, that's why. Like I
Right.
understand this now. But even with that being where you're like, I understand why I couldn't fire, emotionally and mentally, you still carried that like I should have done better or more. What was that like? What do you feel that that was grounded in though? Was that like what? Let's start there.
So when I couldn't return fire, when I took notice what was going on with my hand, um, I carried that anger into the hospital. I
Mm,
remember, so when I was transferred to the hospital, I went right into trauma room. And
yeah,
then when they did all their scans and tests and whatever, I got transferred to a room. And I remember being in my room. Now, I was there, I think, for 3 days. The whole experience in itself is a complete blur to me, but I do remember
mm,
bits and pieces. And I do recall me like screaming and yelling and cursing in my room, like, get me the F out of here, get me the F out of this hospital, I need to get back on the street, this is ridiculous. And everyone was like,
mm.
Ponce, you need to relax, like,
Like
you just got
you,
shot.
yeah, your
What are
hand
you
is kind of
doing?
jacked up, ma'am.
Where are you trying to go? Where are you trying to go? And
You're like, I don't even know at this point. I just need to get out
I
of
did
here.
it. I did it because obviously the front part of my brain and the back part of my brain, they were not
they,
working in
they were
correlation
just both
together.
in two different, like, we got this
Yes,
to do.
yes, yes.
Oh,
So
man.
yes.
So, okay, so you remember bits and pieces.
Hmm.
How, like, I don't even know emotionally, like, how do you look? I stubbed my toe and I'm like, I'm done for. You got
Ah,
shot in the hand. Like, you got shot in the hand and you're just like, let me get back on the street. But I do
right.
think that there's this fighter in us. And I was thinking about this yesterday is after trauma, after we experience trauma, there is this thing that our brain does where in the moment is like fight or flight, and it's people think it's like physical fighting, but
Hmm.
sometimes it is just that getting mad and like let me hear my voice, like let me handle this, and we dominate in chaos. But then when it's calm and not chaos, that's where we have the harder time when we're used to, fighting like that. When you were in this situation, was it hard to like be on leave after getting shot? Like, how long did that feeling go? Because you said it was like you weren't sure how long. You were like, I need to get back on the street. Like, how long did that feeling stay before you were like, okay, I need to sit back and actually heal?
Probably when I got home.
So in the couple days after, we are like, oh dang, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Snap, dude. Like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
just
And
the
then,
yeah. Go
like,
ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to
you're good.
interrupt.
no, I'm like, I got nothing.
Um,
Go ahead. Like, I'm just, yeah.
no, you're okay. So when I went back, when I came home,
Mm.
um, they had security out front of my house for 24 hours a day, and they also had security out front of my parents' house, my partner's house, and his family's house
Mm.
because everything was so there was just so many moving parts that I guess they were scared of maybe retaliation
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
we everything was so fresh. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if they thought they knew who we were. They didn't know if they thought we were officers, and because I was working in undercover operation. Maybe I
Oh,
should
okay.
just start from square
Yeah.
one and explain to you
Go
everything.
for it.
And
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Where
because
I'm
we
like,
keep
I'm in
touching
it.
on
I'm
different
like,
bases.
this is like SVU meets like real life. And I'm just like, tell all of it. So, okay, you were in, go
Okay,
ahead. Go from the beginning. We'll track with
okay,
you.
sounds good. So I was transferred to the narcotic unit from SVU,
Hmm.
and so I was in narcotics for a total duration of 6 months. During the last few months, I was assigned to the FBI task force, and I was assigned to a wiretap investigation, drug related.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, this specific day, it was a Tuesday. I'll never forget it. Obviously, um, I I think our hours got changed up that day or that week, where they switched something around. So I wound up
Yeah.
coming into work anyways, but I was doing an overtime detail. But we were in the we were in the area that we were still able to conduct surveillance on the target location. So we got intel that day that there was so Camden, we sectored off in North Camden, South Camden, and East Camden.
Hmm.
The investigation was initially conducted in South Camden. However, that day we got intel about a location out East Camden, and they wanted to know how it was related.
Mm-hmm.
So we went out, we conducted surveillance out East Camden. We then went to Chick-fil-A. Again, I remember this like it was yesterday, had our food, went back to work, doing our overtime detail. And it was probably around like maybe 8:30 from what I can remember. I remember it being dark, it was summer night, and we were approaching a red light. Or were we at the
Mm-hmm.
red light? Hold on, let me think how this happened. So I remember Rihanna came on. And I'm like, I
Mm.
remember saying to him, I was like, oh my God, I love this song. And he was like,
Doggone
I know,
Rihanna.
I like this song. So crazy. I still love the song till this day.
I
I'm
know.
like,
I
oh,
was
this is
like,
what I was listening to when I got shot. This is such a
it's
great
fine.
song.
And that the fact that you
Whatever.
remember that just tells me like legitimately, like I'm like, yeah, I know when trauma has happened in my life, 100% I remember the songs.
Yes, you
It's
remember
just
like
weird.
all your
Yeah.
senses. They all kick
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So, I remember saying to him, I was like, oh my God, I love this song. And I remember him saying, he mumbled something back. Well, first I remember him saying he liked the song too, and then he mumbled something again. And I
Mm.
remember saying, like, what did you say? And then I started hearing shots.
Mm.
So I thought I heard the first shot come behind me, when in all actuality, this is so weird. It actually went right past my face and blew up our radio inside the car. I don't really know how that happened. That sounded like another shot within itself because I remember that being so loud. And then
Yeah.
the shots just kept getting faster.
Ugh.
And then I realized that they were coming through my side of the windshield because they came through my car door. They didn't make it through me. And then they went through the window, the passenger side window. That was the first shot. The remainder of the shots were through the windshield. So I remember the shots coming through the windshield, and I remember like reverting back. Muscle memory kicks in immediately. How do you shoot out a windshield? Like, that is something that we are trained to do.
Yeah.
So I remember just getting eye level. I had my gun on the dashboard. I was like eye level to see out. I saw a Hispanic or black guy. This is what I remember giving as a description, wearing a white t-shirt, black shorts, black wave cap with a black hat. I remember it specifically. I can still speak to you and see the whole scene in itself.
Yeah.
So I started attempted to return fire, couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Transitioned underneath my dashboard, was like, what the heck is going on? Is my safety on? Is it off? And then I saw my hand and I saw my trigger finger was shot. So I was like, all right, I immediately transitioned to my left hand, rested it on the dashboard. And at that point, the dashboard, as I explained, the windshield, as I explained, was all shattered, so I couldn't return fire.
Mm.
So then the car was still in drive. And I think the car hit a pole, which is what made the car stop. And I was under the dashboard waiting for the shots to stop. And I remember looking at the ground, and all I could hear was like Lily, Lily, Lily. Like it was repetitive, and it was so loud, and I was just like my brain is just like, what the heck? So Lily is my daughter's name, and her full name is Liliana. And I don't know where I was hearing that from, but that's all I could think about was my kid, my kid, my kid.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I'm like, oh my God, this needs to stop. So this is all, again, within 7 seconds. These are my thought processes. So the car hits the pole, come to a stop. I look over, my partner's not in the car. So I'm like, and then I hear him come running back into the car. He was just like, oh my God, are you alive? I thought you were dead. I thought you were dead. That's why I jumped out so quick. I literally thought you were dead. So he's like, I saw he was hit. I get out of the car. I saw he was hit both times in his arms. I'm like, okay, so now you revert to first aid, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, he's not struck in any areas that we need a tourniquet. I'm like, let's get the radio. We got to call it out over the air. Now, exactly how I'm speaking to you is exactly how I was speaking to him.
Right.
And I remember him yelling at me like, why are you so calm? Why are you so calm? Am I shot? Am I shot? And I was like, yes, you're shot. You're fine. You're not shot in any where your main arteries are. We're good. We just have to call it out. So in Camden, there's many officers on the street, and the first thing that, responding to shots fired is an adrenaline rush for us. We need to be the first one there. We need to get the suspect. We need to get the shooter. We need to get that gun, blah, 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 blah. So I remember the communications was calling it out over the air. I remember a female specifically saying, respond to the area, Broadway and Mount Vernon, because that was the incident location. And when I heard the sirens, it was, calming to me. I was calm. I'm like, they're coming. They're going to come pick me up. They're going to pick him up, and we're going to go to Cooper Hospital. So when the officer came, he tried to take my partner and not me. And my partner was like, no, she's hit too. She needs to get in the back of the car. And he was like, oh, so he didn't even know I was struck. I was just, I think, so worried about trying to get my other partner in the car. So make a long story short, the officer transports us. I remember my partner still screaming in the back of the car. And this is kind of funny, but the officer took us to the hospital entrance, to the front of the hospital. And I was remember screaming, what the heck are you doing? This is the front of the hospital. This is not the ER. You're at the wrong spot. Just let me drive. Just let me drive. Get in the car. Shut up.
You're just like, okay.
I'm
the only one thinking here.
I gotta take over again. So he transports us to the ER. We go on stretchers. I remember fumbling with my gun, trying to give them my gun, but my hand, and I was trying to be safe. It was a mess. So and I remember getting wheeled in, and I remember just being so scared. And I remember saying I'm just so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. And I don't know why I was still scared. I think because it was just the unknown and what the heck just happened. And the sheriff's officer that was assisting with wheeling me in, he is somebody who I went to high school with and also graduated the police academy. He was
Mm,
also involved in a shooting within the first 3 months of us being officers. So
mm,
he was like, "You're okay, Liz. You're at
yeah.
the right spot. You have the right people behind you. We're right here with you. Like
Yeah.
you're okay. You're okay. You're at the best spot." So I remember like when they wheeled me into the trauma room, I was like, "Okay." And I said this in my last podcast. I remember having to go pee so bad, and I just kept telling my sergeant like, "I have to go pee. Like I need to go pee. Like I'm literally gonna pee myself right now." And they
Mm.
were like, "You have to wait. You have to wait. You have to wait." And I don't know. Like your body just
It's
responds to
shock.
stress in
Yeah.
just so many different ways.
Yeah. Your body literally was like, I just keep thinking like that was all shock when you were just like, what are you doing in the hospital? Like, and then just being angry. But also I can imagine like for a moment you weren't in control from the
Right.
time that the shooting happened to getting to the hospital. But when you said like all the stuff that was happening with the shooting and you're like, and it was 7 seconds. Like I sit back because I'm going to be honest, like there's moments that I've watched videos where I just see someone shooting like rapid fire and I'm like, what is happening? Like, why did you pull that many times? And
Hmm.
it, when you were talking, it felt like so much longer. But then you're like,
Right.
oh, that was 7 seconds. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it now. Like I
Yes. And
understand, like, yeah.
those 7 seconds definitely felt like 7 minutes. That is for
Yeah.
sure. Because I was just like, "Oh my god, this needs to stop. This needs to stop. This needs to stop." Because I just felt so helpless. Like I was so
Yeah.
helpless under a dashboard, praying for shots. Like that's an awful feeling.
I like cannot wrap my head around it. But when you were talking, I was like, that sounds like 10-15 minutes of just crap happening. And then you're like, all of that, 7 seconds. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, but the
Yes.
brain still, your brain still remembered every single thing about it because our brains are so fast. But it is that thing that like the shock hit when you got into the car of like, okay, we're safe now. So now you're like, it's interesting that when you were in the moment, you were like, partner, we're okay. You're okay. You've been shot. Yep, you're good. No arteries. And then once
Hmm.
people that knew you were there, then your body was like, okay, I can freak out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm safe to do this. But then you said,
Yes.
okay, so then you were saying like, so this is where you were saying in the beginning, you were just like, there was no knowledge. If it was like, yes, they're targeting us, like we don't know why they shot at you guys. So this is where all of you guys had security 24/7. So can you talk us through that a little bit?
Okay, so when I first was transferred up to my room that same night, there was a somebody from the street who was trying to make contact with me to see if I was a cop or whoever. I think they were just trying to figure out, but maybe they
Mm,
got wind that those were cops. I don't really
yeah.
know specifically, but in the course of the investigation, I guess with it being so fresh, when they were able to, well, when they were able to finalize that they didn't know we were police officers,
Mm-hmm.
until that time was done, yes, they had officers out front of my house, my parents' house,
Mm.
his family's house. Um, you would think that's a secure feeling, but it's not.
I
It's
feel
not.
like that I was like, cool, they put people outside your home.
Mm-mm.
Like that's like I know that they're there to make it safe, but to me when you
Right.
say like I don't feel like that's safe enough. Like I'm like
It was
there's
like a
no.
mental thing. It was a
Yeah.
mental thing. Not that
Yeah.
they didn't know what they were doing or how to do their
No,
jobs.
it
It's
just
just
doesn't feel like that's the utmost protection because you're just like in my head I always go to my head goes crazy. My husband has said like that's because you've been through trauma that your trauma mindset is all of the negative things like oh but there's the back door, oh there's the window, oh they can climb on the house, oh they can helicopter down, and it's like they would see that but my brain doesn't register that, so I could see why like even though you were protected it didn't feel protected because your world just like flipped upside down and so quickly, and it really is like 7 seconds, that's all it took.
yeah.
That's insane. That like okay, so when you got home a couple days later, you said like then you started to go, "Oh, okay, I'm not. I'm physically, my hand is not okay. Do you have, like, this is so weird. Do you have a scar on your hand? Or like, is
I
it
don't.
like, where did it get shot? Like, was it like here, or like, where did you get shot on the hand?
Honestly, I I don't know if it was the knuckle or up top here. I don't remember. It's so bad to say. I just don't remember.
No.
It's all such a blur. But
I'm
when
like,
I
how do
had
you,
surgery, I had surgery
yeah.
the following morning. They put like a large pin in my hand, and it basically just allowed, I guess, the muscle to form
Yeah.
around it and form itself back. I still have numbness in my finger and
Mm,
tingling,
I
and
was
then
going to
it does
ask.
affect my whole hand within itself with the actual strength. Like I don't have,
It's
if
not the
I'm not
same.
constantly strengthening it, it's
You
not.
lose it. Oh
It's
god,
not the
that's so
same.
frustrating to me, because it's
Hmm.
like, people think, like, we see the movies where someone gets shot in the hand and then they're just like, oh, and I'm like, because it's fake. But then when you actually hurt your hand, it is so different trying to use it. I have tendonitis in my wrists, but
Okay.
very, very different. Very different
Yeah.
than that. But I had injured this hand in high school pretty bad, that I broke. I think I like broke or tore something right here. And physical therapy I had to go through, I was like, how that little thing that I did, like, I hit it awkwardly and it like
Yeah.
wiped my hand out. So I'm like, now adding that kind of a shot on, where it's like you get shot in the hand. I'm like sitting there like, of course you can't use your hand and you still have problems
Hmm.
with it.
Hmm.
When it is there moments where you have like frustration with your hands still?
Just when I try to open something, I'm like, this is so darn annoying. But
Seriously.
I mean, I've been dealing it what for 6 years now. Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is at this point.
You're used to it now. It's That's
Hmm.
just okay. So now you have entered back into the field. So how long did it take from you going through that from the ambush to going back to work? How long did you take off?
A year and a half.
Mm, that's yeah. How long was your partner off for? A year and a half too, or was he off
Hmm.
for? And where he
Yep.
got shot? Where was he shot? Like you said, both arms, like arms right here.
Yeah, I think it was like the upper portion, maybe, and maybe
God.
right here. I
Yeah.
honestly forget.
That Don't worry. That's not. I mean, it's not important, but it's like, I don't know why I even asked that. I was just like,
It's
because
okay.
I just think I'm like, how did he like move? Like, I don't know. I have
He
questions.
didn't.
He
He
was just,
didn't.
which is probably
They
why he was
didn't.
yelling, huh?
They didn't operate on him right away.
Mm,
They waited till something that had to do with like muscle tissue or something that forms around the bullet and
mm,
maybe
mm.
allows it to push itself out. I don't really remember exactly. I could be making that up, but it's something within that
Yeah,
range. Yeah.
that's crazy. So you both took time off work. People were saying stupid stuff because people are not there until you're in it. You don't know. How long was it before you started hearing stuff about like what you should have done?
Immediately.
Mm. When was the first like did you hear it directly or through other people saying, oh, people are saying this
Through
about
other
you?
people.
God, that's so frustrating to me. I'm gonna go talk to them and be like, just because that's not okay. Um, what was that feeling when you heard people were saying things, and what did you have to start telling yourself to stop
Well, like
listening?
I said earlier, it made me extremely angry. I
Yeah.
was just angry, aggravated. Like, it made me want to go back in time. And that's why I felt like I had to return to work because I
Yeah.
felt like I had something to prove.
Mm,
Like, oh, they think I can't return fire? Okay, well, then let me just get myself back to work and just
let
go
me
back to
show
doing what
them.
I, yeah,
God. How long? You said it was a year and a half, or a year when you started to be like, that's not true. Like, I did all I could. How long was that again? I forget. Maybe I got
about
the
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. Yes, that took me about 2 years, maybe even a little bit more, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I guess as time went on,
Yeah.
you know, and it wasn't so much of like a highlight.
Yeah. No, it was just kind of like, okay, I've accepted that I did do all I could
Hmm.
do. When was the moment that you realized that didn't hold you back anymore? Was it like oh, I realize this is not as strong of a feeling anymore? Or was it like, actively you working on that? Like, no, I can't keep telling myself this.
Work in progress.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There
Did you
wasn't
go?
an actual.
Go ahead.
There wasn't like an actual time frame or
Yeah.
timing or
Yeah.
incident. But like I said, me going to the firearms instructor course and me
Yeah.
being and becoming a better shooter that was rewarding enough.
I'm really glad that you did that, because it's like, so when I was 19, I got into a car accident and someone was like, you have to get back in a car and drive again. And I was like, I'm still afraid to drive. Like, I still have moments
Yeah.
where if my seatbelt locks that same way, I'm like, oh my gosh, because it's just the body's
Mm-hmm.
way. Our body remembers so much more than our brains do.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so you have the PTSD. Can you explain what that looks like for you, if you're comfortable? What PTSD is, and then what does that look like for you? Because I think sometimes people don't understand what that is.
Well, I'm actually doing like some extensive research on it as we speak.
Hmm.
But for me, it's more of like triggers. Like certain
Mm.
things will trigger me, like
Mm.
gunpowder. And I hate sitting in the passenger seat, and like anything in
Mm.
regards to a cracked window or cracked glass. Um, I just hate being in the passenger side seat.
Yeah.
And like when people pull up next to me, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God,
Mm.
don't shoot me. Like that's not a way to live.
No.
Um,
Can you explain the cracked window? What is it? Why is the cracked window scary?
because when the bullets were coming through the windshield where I was sitting, like it cracked the windshield. So like it's just like I don't know, like a trigger, like almost like something bad happened or
Because you
maybe
can't
another
see.
shooting. Like
The windshield gives you
now,
clarity, and the cracked, like, I thinking through that, like, I get it,
hmm
because it's cracking
yeah,
your vision and then you can't see to return that fire.
hmm yeah,
That has,
it
yeah.
was. So it's like I couldn't do anything. Again, I can't do
Mm,
anything. I
mm-hmm,
can't
mm-hmm.
jump out of the car because I don't know where anybody is, and I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, maybe I could have. I don't know. I could have done anything, but I didn't. I did what I had to do, and I survived it. And
But you did
not.
do what was best, because if you had jumped out, you said it, like, I didn't know where anybody was. I didn't know if I was going to get shot more. So, like, staying where you were was actually most likely the safest option,
Hmm
where it was like, okay, now it's done. Because they always tell you, like, when things are going on, what do? You get down, you get out of the way of what's happening, so that way you don't get hit. But
Yes, and
then,
I remember, like, even specifically the first shot. Like I said, I thought it was behind me, and I
yeah,
remember ducking. I was like, I said to him, "What the hell was that?
oh
What
my
the f
god,
was that?" And then it
yeah,
just kept going and going and going. And I
that
was like,
is terrifying.
oh my God, they're shooting at me.
You're like, oh, this is really happening. I just, because I hope to God never to be in that kind of a situation. But it is, I can, just by you saying it, I'm like, I never want to be in that, like, ever, because it's terrifying and it's not something that should happen. I want to ask a question, because I did, with this, like, did they ever find out why you guys were ambushed?
So, from what I can recall, they actually misconstrued our car for somebody else, drug related, they were having issues with. So they thought probably that we were going to come around and
Oh,
shoot them, but no, that wasn't the case at all.
was it an undercover car or a police car?
Hmm
Undercover car.
Undercover car.
Okay, so they really didn't know. It wasn't just like they're like, oops, like, it was legitimate. Like, they thought it was someone they
Hmm
knew coming at them.
Yes, and
Oh my God.
it was fully tinted, like you couldn't see. And
Yeah.
my partner, he always drove, and I always sit in the passenger seat, and like my seat would be like all the way back,
Oh
so you
yeah.
wouldn't really be able to see me anyways.
God. It's terrifying, because there's so many people who do. I think, like you said earlier, when you started off your journey, it was about the money. You're like, I need to make money. I'm a single parent. Like, I got to make sure that we're good. At any point, do they talk about like in the training to not like as a police officer, but like in the training to start academy, do they ever talk about like, hey, you are actually putting yourself on the line daily?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's, well, I mean, I guess it's not a shocker when we know that's what police have to go through. It's one of
And
those things that, yeah, you just don't hear of happening a lot. It does happen though. You just don't hear it.
yes. Yes. So when I was in the police academy back in 2015, I remember like outsiders, like civilians came in and an officer as well and was able to explain their officer involved shooting or like trauma that took place while they were an officer and how it affects your family members. I remember there is a family night that we had with the police
Mm,
academy that was just like basically getting our family involved and familiarized with the stuff that we will be doing
yeah.
and the changes that it does to the dynamic of the household.
Yeah.
um I forget where I was going with this.
Just what, like the expectations that they give you for being a police officer.
Oh yes, so yes, you are informed about the nature that you will be
Mm,
involved in. For those who are not familiar, Camden is an urban area. It is known for its high crime rate. So there's
mm,
crime happening pretty much all day, every day, just about. And so, yeah, uh, do I think that mental health is focused on? It's touched on. I just don't think
right.
it's spoken about as it needs to be.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I know a few cops and like families who are first responders, and they share that same thing, and I had no idea. I've in my church community, one of our police officers, um, that yeah, he was involved in some stuff. Not involved like he doing it, but like he's seen stuff, and it took a really big toll on his mental health, and he's no longer with
Hmm.
us because of that. And that was something that I had learned for the first time, that mental health is not talked about. Do you have like beliefs to why it's not talked about within the police side?
I feel like there's a stigma that we're not allowed to be weak or show feelings.
Mm,
Um, I also say, me as being a female officer, I feel like it's even more harder for us because it's like, don't even think about showing any sort
yeah,
of emotion,
yeah.
like, oh, we have to be tough just like them and do the job just like them. But in all actuality, it's okay to show
Mm,
emotion. It's just
mm,
how and where you
yeah,
express those feelings.
that makes
Like,
sense.
I can't have you crying in front of a victim. That's not going to happen. But once you get your
Yeah.
police car or a different
Yeah.
setting where you're able to decompress, then yes, you're allowed to express your emotions. It's
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't mean you're weak or anything of that nature. No, because I can say for myself, I've done a series of things within my career that I can say a whole lot of other people did not do.
Yeah.
So I say
I
that with
think
confidence.
it's wild because like what the thought that went through my head when you were saying that is like, well, how does a police officer, my sister's in the military, so she has shared some of that, but it's like if you're military or police officer or first responder, how are you supposed to say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, when you literally got shot and people were judging you for how you got shot? like, so
So
it's like,
I mean, therapy. Like, I feel like the
yeah,
only thing that I felt worked for me was therapy, like
yeah,
talk therapy. I also did EMDR therapy.
mm-hmm,
I don't know, for those who aren't familiar, it was just in person, and my doctor would have her hand, and she would go back and forth like this, constant movement, and I would replay the shooting incident while following her hand.
mm,
And obviously, I'm sure you're aware, but it helped put the trauma more in the back of the heads rather than it
the front,
be in front of me.
yeah, which makes sense.
However, yes, it definitely did revert itself when I stopped going to therapy, and or I would take a break, or I couldn't be as consistent as I wanted to because I had a high volume of cases.
Mm. So it came back, which is where the PTSD comes from. So for you, what, like, I know there's a lot of triggers that come in, but have there been have the triggers been consistent, or does it change over time as well?
Um, I mean, I think it always depends where I'm at mentally. Like,
Mm.
I have my really, really strong wave of like strength and ambition, and then I like
Mm.
can fall into a little bit of a depression, and I'm hard on myself, and I second guess myself, and I'm over analyzing, and I'm trying to be a perfectionist,
Yeah.
and then I'll go back up and I start feeling back to normal or whatever you
Yeah.
want to think that's like. And yeah, I just feel like it's always where I'm at in my life.
Yeah. And that's going to be lifelong, and that's hard because it
Mm-hmm.
was a hard situation. Now, I know that police, and you can feel free to like, nah, I don't want to talk about that. I know police officers, I feel like they have a really big stigma, like especially within the media, where it's just I feel like during that time, like I know it's not the same thing, but during that time there started to be a lot more movies coming out where it was like all
Mm-hmm.
cops are bad. How,
Mm-hmm.
when you share your story, like how have you, like has anybody ever changed their mind about that? Because like I know that that's literally out in the media all the time, is all police are bad, and I'm like, that's not true. But what,
Um,
how
how
have you
was
spoken into
I?
that? Yeah, do you
Well,
get to speak on that?
I could say in like two different aspects of my life. So
Mm,
working in Camden, nobody likes the cops. Everybody hates the
yeah.
cops. That's just what it is. But I feel like if you just talk to people with respect and you talk to them like normal human beings, you're going to be shown a lot more respect than if you were to
Mm,
just be like, "Hi, I'm da 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 da," and it's just too much. Just
yeah.
talk to people like normal human beings, because we are, at the end of the day, aside from a badge and a gun, I'm a human outside of this. I have feelings, I have emotions, I have a whole life as well. So
Yeah.
I felt like for me, just talking to people regularly, because I had to interview people, suspects, witnesses, victims, just
Yeah.
talking,
Yeah.
communicating, just communicate, be able to use your words. A lot of officers struggle with communicating. They can't talk, they can't get out what they need to get out. And it's like, you need to get out what you need to get out because you just detain these people. Start talking,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so yes, that always worked. And I'm trying to think what else. I mean, me telling my story, I just recently started speaking about my story.
Yeah.
When I returned back to work, I was offered a position as a lead instructor at the police academy, and I did that for a year. And there wasn't really like a segmented time where it's like, okay, Detective Ponte is going to come in and tell you about her shooting, and we're going to make like a curriculum out of this today. No,
Mm-hmm.
I never did that. So I kind of just internalized everything.
Yeah.
And then like it started to make me feel like, as time went on, like, was my incident not that tragic? Like, do people not
Mm.
care anymore? Now, I was in a 300-man department. There's a lot going on. Like I said, high crime rate. It is pure chaos in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe my shooting wasn't, their primary thought process. And okay, I get it, but like I do feel like we were kind of forgotten about, and maybe we
Mm-hmm.
were, and we are so like into our work. Like, I know me as a worker, I was just always 110% all the time, like most of the time, I guess you could say. But like
Mm-hmm.
my work, I definitely overindulged myself in, and made it my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's was another issue.
If so, because you're going into the advocacy space now, I'm sure that that's one of the things you want to change is like how police officers are seen, and making sure that they're very, very seen after something like that. What are some of the other things that you would like to advocate for or change when it comes to making a difference in the police world? Is that where you want to do your advocacy, or are you wanting to do it elsewhere?
Primarily law enforcement, first responders, maybe nurses as well, EMS,
Mm-hmm.
dispatch. I feel like everybody needs this. We are not provided enough resources to seek the help that we need. And
Mm.
so I would like to be the voice that comes in, informs my class of, resources and my personal experience so they can be like, okay, it's okay to go seek help. It's okay to go talk to a doctor. It's okay to maybe try an SSRI or maybe not. Like, everybody's different. Everybody handles trauma differently. But I would just like people to know that PTSD is a real thing.
Yes.
There's a lot of different moving parts that come with it, and these are the resources that you can use. And also, like, to speak to the administration within police departments. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we have an officer resilience program. Cool. We don't all trust speaking to other officers.
Yeah.
Like, because it can become a liability issue. So I feel like people are very like, check the box, you know? Like, do you feel like you're
Yeah.
gonna kill yourself? Do you need to call cop to cop? Like, and then you're just like, I don't even want to tell you what's wrong with me now. Because why are we checking off the box? So
Yeah. It's not genuine as
outside,
it needs to
right.
be. Yeah.
It can be, and I'm sure it has maybe worked in other aspects, but overall I feel
It's not working. When it comes to like when you just made the decision to leave being a police officer, resign, not resign, but retire, right? You retired.
mhm,
So
retired, yes.
what was that deciding factor of you're just like, I'm done. I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to just
My
kind of,
car was broken into,
oh, snap.
and I was just all types of triggered. Like, it
Mm,
was on my property, my vehicle, glass was everywhere. Some of my like important documents and stuff were taken from my car. Um I did have police gear in there, but thankfully they didn't. I think it was like a winter hat they were able to get that was in my book bag
mm,
that
mm.
had like the insignia sign of the police department. But yeah, that was it.
You're like, I'm
I
done.
know that sounds crazy, but I was like, that's it. That's it.
It doesn't though. Like that's when you said that, I was like, yep. I would have been like, I'm out. I would have honestly, I would have been out before getting shot. Like I would have just been like, this is not for
Right.
me because it is hard. That's why I never went the military route or the police route was because I was like, that is not for me. That is so hard, and that's okay to admit that. But like I feel like so many people push that at a young age, like you should be a police officer, you should go to the military, those are your options,
Yes.
or medical fields, because that's where
Yes.
you can make a lot of money.
Yes.
And I'm like, but we're not. It's not that you were a bad cop at all. It doesn't mean failure because you retired. It doesn't mean any of those things, but people whisper those things, and it's like until you are in your shoes, shut your mouth. Like just
Yeah.
no. Like I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Like I want that to
And
sound rude.
even
I want
like
that to come across the way it needs
retiring.
to.
No,
Yeah.
no, 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 it doesn't. But even retiring, that was like a whole nother aspect as well. Like, I felt like, again, my
Mm,
power was taken from me. Like, as like
mm.
cliche as that sounds, but then I
No,
was
yeah, it
like,
makes sense.
no, you're just, you're not okay. Like, you
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
sit and go back to your daily therapy sessions, like,
Mm,
and I was like, I need to do mind, body, and soul. So I started hot yoga. I've had Reiki
yeah,
done. I've done more like studies on, well, studying the anatomy aspect of the brain when it goes through trauma. I mean,
yeah.
like, I really have been trying to like dissect every process, and everything is reverting back to PTSD.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and I also developed vertigo, and
Oh, yeah,
I got that from just chronic stress. I've had two
yeah.
really bad episodes. Both, I was hospitalized for both
Mm,
incidents, and both times I was down and out for a week.
yeah, yeah. There's two things that come to mind. So I think this is like for me growing up in foster care and then raising siblings and stuff. Like when I first went into college, I started gravitating towards psychology, and it
Mm-hmm.
was because they were talking about like what trauma does to the brain. And I was like, that's interesting. I want to know more like why. Like why does our body respond? And there's a book called The Body Holds the Score, and it literally